of rain, a strengthening breeze, especially around southwest coast, making it feel cool, 16 to 18 Celsius at best. Some places lower where we've got the persistent wet weather. And further persistent bands of rain move through during Saturday evening. Much of it by midnight moving out into the North Sea, but it stays damp and cloudy, a lot of low cloud around for England and Wales overnight, as well as southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, and as a result it's going to be a relatively mild night, 16 Celsius in places by dawn, but it's still breezy in the south. As we start off Sunday, it's a slow start with the cloud eventually lifting and breaking. Sunny spells giving way to showers in southern parts. Central areas, northern England, southern Scotland, North Wales, seeing persistent bands of rain once again. Scotland, a cloudier day, but actually brightening up later with 1 or 2 showers in the far north. Cool in the far north, warmer towards the south.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GBNews.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning with Esther and Phil, your favourite married couple. I'm not actually sure we're each other's favourite married couple, but anyway, we're here today. But first of all, what we're being discussing is that Uxbridge by-election. Was that the start of a motorists' fight back? Have motorists said, enough is enough, you're fleecing us in the name of the environment? I know, Phil, you've been saying that for a long time.
I certainly have. And I know when people know that we're married, I know what they all say. I know what you'll all be saying at home. She's a very lucky lady. I know that's what everybody thinks. We're also going to be discussing about the two-child cap on child tax credits. Lots of Labour MPs are very unhappy that the Labour leadership have said that they're going to keep that cap. We will be discussing and debating whether or not it's a good policy or not.
And with inflation coming down this week, we say, have we broken the back of it? Are things on the up? We'll be speaking to GB News favourite Justin Urquhart-Stewart on this subject later, and also asking, is it time for Dame Alison Rose, yes, the CEO of NatWest, to go?
Yes, it is. And we should be so lucky. We'll be speaking to music legend...
Should I say him getting married to me? He should be so lucky, but go on.
We'll be speaking to music legend Pete Waterman about the new musical I Should Be So Lucky that will be coming soon. Tell us what you think about which is your favourite Stock, Aitken and Waterman song and artist. I'm a big Bananarama fan. You like Rick Astley?
I certainly do. Never going to give you up.
Yeah. And of course, we want to know what you think about all of these issues of the day. Get involved in the conversation. Email us gbviews@gbnews.com and we'll read through as many as we can throughout the show. But first, it's the news headlines with Tatiana.
Thank you very much and good morning. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Millions of rail passengers are set to face continued disruption as strikes by the RMT continue on one of the busiest days for travel this year. Thousands of RMT members at 14 train companies are walking out over pay and conditions. Services are also disrupted because of a ban on overtime by ASLEF union train drivers. Meanwhile, the Port of Dover says it could take passengers up to 2.5 hours to pass through border checks during peak hours, as schools have broken up for the holidays, and enhanced post-Brexit passport checks by French border officials have also increased the processing times. Travel expert Simon Calder has been at the Port of Dover this morning.
Cars expected to turn up at a rate of 13 per minute. And certainly the rate I've been seeing them here so far this morning, that feels about right. This, of course, is the ferry port that takes people to across to Calais and also to Dunkirk. Actually, just looking around, it's moving pretty slowly. They are saying they could possibly have delays of 2.5 hours.
Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of people are expected to pass through Gatwick and Heathrow Airport, adding to those travel difficulties. Around 200,000 people are expected at Manchester Airport and around 71,000 at Bristol. With passenger volumes returning to pre-pandemic levels this summer and some ports exceeding those volumes, the Border Force expects to see more than 34 million air arrivals coming through the UK passport control over the coming months. Well, families going on European beach holidays are being hit by higher prices compared with last summer due to inflation. New figures from the Post Office show the cost of meals, drinks and beach items have risen year on year. Puglia in Italy was the only location where prices for UK visitors have dropped. The highest annual increases are in Bulgaria, Turkey and Madeira. Well, supermarkets have more than doubled their margins on fuel since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The RAC says Asda, Tesco, Morrisons and Sainsbury's were making an average of around 4.7 pence per litre on fuel sales when the Ukraine war began in February last year. The motoring company found this had increased to around 10 pence per litre, leading to higher pump prices. Supermarket fuel margins were 2.3 pence per litre in 2016. Now, the number of cancer staff leaving the NHS is on the rise, with more than 4,000 having left the workforce last year. New figures from NHS England show the rate of those leaving cancer hospitals and community health services hit 12.1% in the year to September last year. That was an increase from 10.4% the year before, and the highest rate since at least 2010. Well, it comes as new analysis from Macmillan Cancer Support shows since 2010, the number of patients seen by a specialist for suspected cancer has grown almost 4 times faster than the number of NHS cancer staff. A range of measures to tackle inequalities in healthcare for women have been launched by the government. £25 million will be spent on health hubs to support women at every stage of their lives. Women who suffer pregnancy loss have been promised improved care, and as part of new measures, the NHS website will also be updated to include more content on hormone replacement therapy and enable girls and women to access information more easily. The government is to consider creating a national memorial in honour of the late Queen Elizabeth II. A committee to decide on a monument is expected to be announced ahead of the anniversary of Her late Majesty's death. Queen Elizabeth died on the 8th of September. She was 96. And finally, Kensington Palace has released a photo of Prince George to mark his 10th birthday. Prince George is pictured smiling for the camera, wearing a checkered shirt and teal trousers while sitting on the steps of Windsor. The future king celebrates his birthday today. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now it's back to Esther and Philip.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now, welcome back to Saturday Morning Live with Esther and Phil.
Now, the people of Uxbridge made their concerns known when it comes to ULEZ in the by-election this week.
Is this the start of the motorist fight back? With over 33 million cars on the road, will this be the deciding factor for the next general election? Joining us now to discuss this is the leader of the Reform Party, Richard Tice. Morning, Richard. So, is it the motorists' fight back? Could this swing the next general election? Motorists have said, you know what, you've fleeced us for long enough in the name of the environment, and it isn't true.
Absolutely, without question. This is the beginning of the fight back by motorists and by voters against the madness of net zero, Phil and Esther, because that's what's driving all of this. That's what's driving Sadiq Khan's complete obsession with climate change, with net zero, frankly, to the detriment of Londoners about other issues. This was a remarkable turnaround. You've got a Labour candidate who, when he actually started knocking on doors, he panicked and realised this was a major, major issue. So he did a U-turn, and then his leader thought about doing a U-turn on one day and then flip-flopped on another day when talking to LBC. And look, the truth is that, quite rightly, they have been sent away with the tail between the legs. This is the second time, of course, because in Cambridge City, in a council by-election just a few weeks back, a councillor from your party, the Conservatives, not often elected, I think for the last dozen years in Cambridge, he won on the basis of a campaign against the congestion charge in Cambridge. So this is clearly the beginning of the fight back, but it's more than just the motorists. It's the voters saying, we don't want this huge cost that is imposed on all of us by net zero. So I actually think we should be calling out this week, this is peak net zero madness, and we have a chance of winning against the eco cult.
Richard, obviously for the London mayoral election, you've got Howard Cox as your candidate, who's sort of the ultimate defender of the motorist, who's been doing it for many, many years. Obviously, the London mayoral election next year, for the first time, like the Uxbridge by-election, is going to be done on first past the post. Didn't the Uxbridge by-election show that if people want to beat Sadiq Khan and they want to stop the expansion of ULEZ and all the rest of it, the only way of doing that is by voting Conservative?
No, not at all, because we didn't stand a candidate in Uxbridge. What it shows is that actually what motorists want, what our candidate Howard Cox, the ultimate campaigner on behalf of motorists for over a decade. Motorists support what, and indeed Londoners, Uxbridge voters, support what Howard Cox stands for, which is to scrap not only the expansion, but actually the existing ULEZ, which again is a tax on the poor. People want to get rid of all the dreadful low traffic neighbourhood schemes that are actually causing more pollution and more congestion. And in many areas, we don't need the 20-mile-an-hour limit that actually is slowing down traffic, makes no difference at all to safety, as data clearly shows from the University of Belfast. And that's what motorists want. So Howard's the guy who's standing up for Londoners and getting London moving. I think it'll be a very exciting election, without question.
Richard Tice, leader of Reform UK, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it.
And this really is the first time motorists have stood up. I mean, we've said for ages how placid
I've
they
been
have
saying
been.
for years that the motorists should be the biggest voting lobby that there is in the country.
33 million cars on the road. That's a lot of cars, a lot of households all being impacted.
Now they've found their voice. Now they've found their voice.
The lion has roared. Anyway, to look through the top stories of the day, we've got more lions roaring in the studio. We're joined by former Labour Party advisor Matthew Lazar and diary editor of The Spectator, James Heal. So I'm going to start with you, Matthew. What sort of got your attention this morning?
Well, I think on the by-election front is we've all and nobody stopped talking about how young the winner in the winner in Yorkshire is. I mean, I tell you what, never mind the old joke about policemen. You know, when the MPs are getting younger, you know, I think anybody who's over, well, I was going to say over 40, but I think anybody who's over 25 in politics has spent the last few days wondering if they've pressed the vote. But I think there's a more serious issue here about young people and Parliament, because Labour criticised it when in the slightly notorious Boris resignation list, the 29-year-old...
It certainly did. Yeah. Charlotte Owen there, 29. They were saying, it's a disgrace. How can she be having speeches in the House of Lords, passing comments, whereas he'll be 25 and a lawmaker?
Absolutely.
She was passing comments, or a revisionist, as it were, what have you.
Well, I think the difference... I mean, I think the difference is that that she's there for life, so hopefully she's got 50 years ahead of her.
He's there for a few months.
Well, I hope for a few years at least. But possibly, obviously, it is a danger that he is only there for a few months, although I'm sure he'll...
So you don't think it matters? 25, no world experience. His mum came out fighting for him, didn't she? He's always wanted to be Prime Minister since the age of 6.
I nearly took him on as an intern 3 years ago.
Did you?
Absolutely.
So what was he like in info?
When you say nearly took him on, that sounds as if you didn't take him on.
It was because the role didn't come up. I would have taken him if the role had come up.
OK, it wasn't because you thought he was a doff.
No. I mean, I do feel a bit sorry for him that his grandfather saying that he wanted to be Prime Minister at 7 looks like the sort of comment that might haunt you forever, like William Hague in his conference speech, which he did as a 12 or as a 15-year-old.
What do you think about this, James? I mean, obviously Johnny Mercer got a lot of stick for saying that it looks like an episode of The In-Betweeners or something, and that and criticised him for spending more time at university than he had in work. I remember when I was trying to get selected for the 2001 election, I was doing my selection, I think I was 27, and lots of associations said to me that you're too young. We're not going to pick you because you're too young. Do you think it matters?
Well, first of all, on the Johnny Mercer in-betweeners comment, I thought it was so in-betweeners that his mum came out and defended him. It was like Will's mum, and it's not like that. I felt God.
And when she said he wanted to be Prime Minister age 6, it was sort of getting worse, wasn't it?
I mean, I thought that's the last thing he needs. But look, I think it's really about, with MPs, it's about character, not age. And frankly, you know, Churchill was 25 when he got elected, Tony Benn was 25 when he got elected. People get elected at all different ages. If you're old enough to vote, I think you're old enough to stand. And really, it's up to the voters. They want to put you in, that's good enough. And I think that also assumes that, you know, you're not too old, you're not too young. And I think all that matters is reviews and can you stand up for your constituents?
Yeah, no, I agree. Although I think what you want is a cross-section of people in Parliament.
I was just going to say, absolutely. I think you don't want a House of Commons full of 25-year-olds more than you want it full of 75-year-olds. Yeah. And I think one danger is that in politics we've seen everybody, and indeed, I was looking at the list of the ages of Prime Ministers across Europe, because a guy wants to become Prime Minister in the Netherlands at 62, people said he's too old, so that's become a big thing. And actually, the average is about 60. It's in Britain that we got stuck with all these 45-year-old ex-special advisors, Cameron, Clegg, my old boss
and in America, they're all like retirees, aren't they? I mean,
there's hope for us yet.
Maybe you've got an 80-year-old running for Prime Minister, be a bit different, like Joe Biden in America.
Though I have to say, we had some friends come over over and they watched the final PMQs on Wednesday, Americans, and they couldn't believe how feisty it was, how quick-witted you had to be, and they said, oh my God, that would finish Biden off. He would not be president if he had to stand. He can't even read the auto cue. So I thought that was interesting. You would have to do PMQs, and it's brutal.
I love it. I think, honestly, PMQs is fantastic because you get people standing up and getting their 2 minutes, the most powerful man in the country, and it's brilliant. And Americans, everybody watch it, and we mock it here, say Punch and Judy politics. They love it, and they would love it in Congress.
What stories caught your eye, James?
Well, there was a rather interesting story which I think it was you brought up, Philip, about what's going on in Manchester.
Oh yeah, well this is my favourite story of the day. It's in the Daily Star, obviously, naturally.
That paper record.
It must be true. Page 17 of the Daily Star. Manx mad for car sex. Randy Mancunians top the list of Brits who would rather romp in a car. And more than,
serious news, then.
Yeah, obviously. More than a third, 37%, said they would opt for a motor over a mattress. Now, the thing that struck me about this survey, which I thought was interesting here, is that in third place of the people most likely to want to romp in a car were people from Liverpool.
Oh. I can second that one, or third it.
But I have no personal experience.
The people who came second...
You've got to get in with the
people who came from second were from Yorkshire.
Oh, my goodness, we're dead certs then, aren't we?
And the people who came top from Manchester, and you represent a seat that's very close to Manchester, so I thought between us that we were...
Between the two of you and my...
I know we were talking about a motorist revolution today. It wasn't a sexual revolution. Absolutely. It was one actually about being charged excess.
So, James... car sex?
Well, I mean, I'm from London, so I've never. This isn't my.
You're only ever on the tube, exactly. So is it tube sex?
Or on a bike?
Cost of living crisis, you know. But I mean, I thought it was just quite interesting, and perhaps says something about some of the more adventurous elements up north, which I'll bear in mind next time I'm on the roads there.
Matthew, you're a Manchester.
I am, but I'm a non-driver.
It takes two to tango. To be honest,
somebody in both seats, or at least to start with.
No, but somebody else could have the car, is what he's saying. Not just you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I could be in the passenger
seat. You could be a passenger seat. Moving on to a summer of Sunakism, because I think you've embarrassed everybody.
I think he dodged that.
He did.
Just in case I find that I'm not too old to be a politician at some later point in my life, these things come back and haunt me.
But do you think it could have been worse? This is in the Sun today. It could have been worse. Now get ready for a summer of Sunakism. Now, there was a threat of a reshuffle this week. Was it probably, James, a good idea he didn't have the reshuffle on Friday? Because it would have probably looked an immediate reaction to the by-elections that didn't go well for him.
I agree, and I think that it's about trying to keep party unity in the ranks and talking to people. Obviously, everyone wants to talk about the cabinet, but further down the ranks as well, Minister of State level, PPSs, etc. They want to move up, so it's a good way of keeping your troops in line over the summer and really doing a bit more implementation as you move out of that kind of phase into the kind of communication phase before the election.
Have you heard any rumours about the reshuffle, James? Here it's got Michael Gove going to health.
I mean, I've heard some rumours. I don't think if you look at Rishi Sunak's style and what he said previously, he's going to do a great big purge, etc., the kind of Boris did in 2019 when he came in and got rid of half the cabinet. But I do think certain posts, obviously Ben Wallace at defence is going to be a key question. Do you move, say, someone else into that role to free up another portfolio in government?
James cleverly begging to stay in his role that he's in, not wanting to move at all. But who else do you think could be moving?
I think it would be interesting to look at John Glenn, Chief Secretary of the Treasury. He might be a contender for that role of defence. I also think some of the junior people, like Claire Coutinho, is one to look out for. She's impressed on the media round doing as childcare minister. And I think it's going to be about really kind of making sure you've got the most telegenic faces going into that, making out the points of arguments. And I think basically we used to have Michael Fallon was great at doing the Minister for the Day programme as Defence Secretary, go out and take the fight to Labour. And that's what the Conservatives are really lacking on the front bench at the moment, people to make the argument, a pugilist to fight
like an Angela Rayner or something. Who would you have as sort of shuffling round?
Well, I mean, I think it is shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic. Sorry to bring out the old cliche, but I mean, the idea that changing the culture secretary or yet another health secretary for the last year of the government, I think one danger is it does really give it as a sort of it does add to the sort of fag end thing of the government. I think there's a big danger for this week though for my guy, for Keir Senior, as we'll now have to call him with Keir Junior.
No, just call him Sir. He's the Sir Keir. The other one hasn't got that title yet.
I think that there's a bit of a danger for Labour at the moment because the National Policy Forum is meeting in Nottingham. Thank goodness I don't have to go to these things. Not on the payroll this weekend in Nottingham, and there'll be a lot of pressure pressure over two things. One of which is actually on the Green agenda, which was kind of on the actual agenda of this event anyway. Which is there's quite a lot of pressure within the party. My old boss Ed Miliband is evangelical on the Green agenda,
and they've already ditched the £28 billion a year for their green policy. They're now wobbling on the ULEZ.
There's a big divide between the unions who want to keep jobs in some traditional industries.
Do you think the by-election result in Uxbridge will sway that decision?
I think that now you'll see. Obviously, Keir was pretty clear yesterday in condemning Sadiq.
But there's
so I think what the danger now is you have a sort of Labour wobble over the summer. That becomes the story. You've had a kind of we know what the media's like. We're due a Labour moment, a bit of a.
But there's another moment as well, isn't there, with the child benefit?
So the two-child benefit cap, absolutely, which is the other which is the thing that they'll be talking about this weekend.
And we're talking about it later on this show as well.
I think the truth of the matter is the current position on the two-child benefit thing will have to be tweaked.
Do you think Ed Miliband might get shuffled out of his job?
Oh, well, I think there is a possibility that he might get shuffled out of the environment portfolio. I think he'll keep him in the shadow cabinet.
Have got to be careful there. If you're giving up on lots and then you're shuffling everybody out, could you make a lot of trouble on the backbenchers, Miliband?
I think the problem is that Miliband could over time be seen as the kind of voice of this the Green New Deal. The big divide is between the unions who want to keep the jobs and the party activists who are all kind of, a lot of whom are sort of Greenpeace. They're in Greenpeace, the RSPB, and therefore the environment it means a lot to them. So that's one to look out for.
I think the key thing is trying to get a sort of good balance between opinions of the public and also the party, because you need to motivate your activists to go out and vote. And I think a lot of activists were pretty disgruntled with this decision on the two-child benefit cap. I was sat outside the Parliamentary Labour Party on, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, listening to, and I could hear all the Labour MPs standing up and voicing criticisms. And I think that shows that this is an issue. And those kind of tensions in the Labour Party, which Keir Starmer's a lot to paper over the cracks, they're there and beneath the surface, and the Tories want to bring those out and exploit them this summer.
But a bit of fun. Just stop oil. Fantastic. They've been stopping them.
Yep. I mean, I think it shows a lot about how Keir Starmer's looked at the polling. You can see what's happened in ULEZ and stuff, and so I think it's going to be something he has to address this summer.
It's nice to know how our parliamentary meetings are so, sort of...
well covered in the media.
Yeah, well, it's all private, isn't it, and everything? We don't bank on James...
Just soundproofing today to Victoria.
James with his glass to the door, listening into everything that we're saying.
Glass to the door, just say that.
Well, look, you'll both be staying with us. More stories of the day, more things that's happening. Thank you very much indeed, Matthew and James. But coming up in a few moments, Wednesday saw a bigger fall in inflation than was expected. So does that mean we've broken the back of it? We'll be speaking to friend of the show, Justin Urquhart-Stewart, about that, and also about the Coutts debacle and whether it's time for the CEO of that bank to resign.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Yes, we've moved positions. We've come to the cosy area. Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live with Esther and Phil. It's now 10:26. Lots of you have been getting in touch over that ULEZ scheme and the Uxbridge by-election. Clive here says, is it not the case that air quality on London Underground is worse than that on the roads? Maybe they should start there. Absolutely right, Clive. It is a disgrace on the tube. You've got to wash your hair once you've been under that.
Chris says when diesel and petrol cars are no longer made, will ULEZ payments be scrapped? I think he's cynically suggesting that the payments will still continue.
Yeah.
And I suspect, Chris, you're probably right.
Yeah, just another tax, as we all thought.
Now, could the end be in sight for Britain's inflation problems after it fell to its lowest level in over a year this week?
Well, joining us now to run through the latest economic news is director and co-founder of Regionally, Justin Urquhart-Stewart. So it was a good bit of news for the government this week. Inflation had fallen lower than people expected. So has the back of inflation been broken, and will Rishi Sunak meet his targets of halving inflation by the end of the year?
He's promising a lot, saying he's going to halve it, particularly when he can't control it. You should say, well, I'm going to halve inflation. How? But, yeah, it's good news. It's coming down. And we've seen big drops in energy. We've seen drops also in food. However, of course, what have we had this week? The Russians cutting up about the Black Sea, and we have the price of wheat going up again rather dramatically. So, yes, items which were expensive had come down again are showing signs of going back up. So we're not there yet. Also, of course, inflation has been embedded because you're seeing it through the pay rises. Yeah. However, as the levels start coming down for next year's pay rise, there's less argument. Say it's double digit, it's now single digit, you're bringing it down to a closer level.
But does the good news that inflation's coming down mean that the bad news is that a recession's more likely to be on the way?
Well, if we could have
had to bring the tone of the show down. I was trying to be positive. Look at the, as Boris say, the sunny uplands. But no, you bring us down. So answering his question,
you could actually, we will see a recovery, and it is going to be positive. No, but unfortunately, if we could have a governor of the Bank of England who could please stop putting interest rates up. Interest rates will impact if you had inflation relating to consumer spending, a consumer boom. There is no consumer boom. This is actually a structural issue. So therefore, you find other ways of dealing with it. We've had far too much money being printed in all those areas, so we could have more government, not spending, but in terms of tax breaks for more investment coming through. Those are all positive elements which would encourage things. So it'll probably continue to fall. But will we actually see a recession? We've been pretty close to one for the past year. We get excited, it's 0.1 or it's 0.2. By the time you've actually worked that out over a year or so, it's flat.
Yeah.
What you need to do is get to the next stage.
It should be a summer of reflection for Rishi Sunak, shouldn't it? Don't tax people when you don't need to for these ULEZ schemes. Don't be getting interest rates going, but think of bringing them down. And tax, you need to think of those. You need to make people have some money, more of the money left in the pocket.
Give them some encouragement to do so. Make tax more... Now, how could you make it positive? Now, how do you make it positive? By actually making sure that people get rewarded for certain taxes. For example, supposing you're actually getting people to pay more tax on certain items now, you actually give them a discount on maybe inheritance tax or capital gains tax or something like that, which doesn't cost the government very much money indeed, but it's making it more positive and you're encouraging people to do investment and you're then getting more confidence coming back.
Now, Justin, what I wanted to ask you about, we obviously had this week the big issue of Nigel Farage and Coutts Bank and the outrage of them saying that the leaked documents showing why they'd closed his account down because of his political views.
Didn't align with theirs.
They said that, you know, that his values didn't align with their values. We've got lots of this going on. You know, I think when Dame Alison Rose took over now, she said her top priority was going to be tackling climate change. We have lots of companies in the FTSE saying that a big thing about sustainability and all this. When I worked for Asda, we were mainly focused on looking after our customers. That was maybe seems an old-fashioned view now. I just wonder, what do you make of this trend of big companies sort of becoming more political? Is this something that investors are increasingly insisting upon from the companies that they want to invest in? Or is there going to be a backlash from investors from all of this sort of political interference?
This is all you see. There's three letters. It's comes that this acronym ESG, right? Environmental, sustainable, and governance. Basically, you could have that as a form of greenwash to actually say we're now doing these things because we're looking more politically, etc. We're doing the green things. But actually, how about just running your bank properly? You're not there to actually vet. Obviously, you've got to make sure the customers aren't doing anything illegal. You know, are they money laundering or anything like that? Have you tried opening a bank account recently? It's quite easy for an oligarch, I think. If you've actually got to open one for a small child, you virtually have to leave the child in custody with a bank to get them to actually do anything about it. So, no, banks should stick to what we're supposed to be doing properly, but don't always. But also actually just make sure that they should have good governance anyway, in terms of running a bank. Are they sustainable and environmentally operating in a positive manner? They should be. But it's not necessarily the way to run the bank. And certainly, actually trying to then make sure that they are politically acceptable by vetting all your clients and customers. No. That is not how you run a business.
And worse than that, I'd say confidentiality should be key in a bank. And if it's proved that actually it was Dame Alison Rose who gave the information to a BBC reporter that actually he didn't have enough credit in the bank, basically said, to move the story away. This is going to be a big issue for her. We've got to prove it yet, but confidentiality surely is key.
You could get fired from a bank for doing that, for releasing customer information. And frankly, it would be a very good example of sitting there saying, you play fast and loose with information on your customers, and therefore, actually, you're not being responsible. You're back to be ESG again. You're not actually operating in a...
I mean, given the damage to the reputation that NatWest has gone through over the last week, I mean, do you think her position's unsustainable?
Well, bear in mind, we are still the largest owner of this bank, aren't we?
40% of it,
and, you know, she's leading that business. If she's leading that business and not reading it properly, then I'm sorry, then she will have to go. Because I'm afraid that is a really high-profile issue, this.
And the joke of it was the reputation committee for the bank that was doing this dossier. They couldn't have done a bank of 330 years of age more reputational damage, could you? The irony of it.
Gerald Ratner, isn't it, all over again?
Well, exactly.
Can I ask you a quick question? Because this is something else Phil and I have been talking about, and it's to do with consultants who've gone on strike over the 6% pay rise. However, their wages between £100,000 and £125,000, they then get taxed 60% rate. So really, are they wanting a tax reduction as well as a pay increase? What is going on here?
That was the proposal. You remember we saw a few months ago that they were trying to get rid of the anomaly that consultants were actually finding themselves effectively not worth going to work anymore because I'm going to be taxed more for it, therefore I won't actually earn anymore. That was an anachronism, and that has been ironed out. But it's making it look very greedy, isn't it? Because what it does do is allows those consultants to say, well, I won't do my NHS work because I've got a lot of private work to do here instead, which I can earn more money at.
Justin Stewart, as always, thank you very much indeed. Coming up in a few moments, we'll be discussing the controversial two-child benefit cap. Labour was always set to reverse it, but Keir Starmer has changed his mind. We'll be debating whether it should stay or whether it should go.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So it's been quite a gloomy start to the day for many with plenty of rain around, and this is all due to this area of low pressure that's going to move eastwards through this weekend, bringing some stronger winds as well across southern parts of the UK as those isobars pack together. Now looking at this afternoon across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, a fine afternoon with some sunny spells and the odd spot of rain, but elsewhere gloomy and cloudy with plenty of rain around and some heavier bursts for western hills. And the temperatures reflecting that with highs only into the teens, maybe just scraping 20 degrees in the southeast. Now, as we go through this evening, that rain is going to continue to move its way eastwards, so plenty of rain around across much of England and Wales and into Northern Ireland. Remaining drier across Scotland with some clear spells, and in those northeasterly winds feeling cool tonight there too. But elsewhere, with stronger winds, especially for southern coasts, and plenty of cloud around, those temperatures remaining in the teens. Now, as we go to Sunday, we have this band of rain that's going to sit across northern England, maybe pushing into northern parts of Wales as well. So if you are out and about in these areas throughout Sunday, do bear this in mind, as there could be some difficult driving conditions. Either side of this, though, some brighter spells, but still a few scattered showers, and feeling more pleasant in the sunshine across southern parts of England.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant Vickery, my superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live with Esther and Phil. It's 10:39. We were asking Justin Urquhart-Stewart just before the break whether or not Dame Alison Rose should be sacked as Chief Executive of NatWest and Coots after what happened to Nigel Farage. We did a Twitter poll and the results are in, and 88% of people in that Twitter poll say yes, she should be sacked. So
Overwhelmingly. Time for her to jog on, as they say, and click. Anyway, the issue of the two-child benefit cap has created a rift in the political landscape. Sir Keir Starmer has backed the policy introduced by George Osborne.
The two-child benefit cap was introduced back in 2017, designed to be fair to the taxpayer whilst protecting the most vulnerable.
Well, joining us now to discuss this is Frank Young, editorial director at Civitas, and Neil Hanvey, leader of the Alba Party in the House of Commons. So I'll start with you, Frank Young. Controversial policy. So why do you back it?
Well, I support this policy because it introduces fairness to the taxpayer into the welfare system. And I think you have to recognise that this policy actually is far from controversial outside Westminster. The public overwhelmingly support this policy and capping benefits and keeping some sort of control over the welfare budget. And Keir Starmer, I think, now recognises that the sort of voters that he needs to win at the next general election support this policy by 3-1. So I think that is starting to focus minds within the Labour Party.
Frank, do you accept that whatever whether it's fair to the taxpayer or not, and whatever the principles at stake, do you accept that if this policy was scrapped, it would reduce levels of child poverty in the country?
Well, I don't accept that, actually. I think both major parties vying for government need to set out a more comprehensive poverty strategy ahead of the general election that really focuses on growing the economy, something that even the Labour Party now accept is a political priority, making sure that work always pays and is the best route out of poverty. And that means making sure that childcare is affordable, and it means making sure we have really good jobs across the country that people, particularly parents...
Neil was shaking his head vigorously at lots of that. Neil, just to bring you in here, do you not accept that people should take responsibility for their own lives, and if they can't afford to have more than 2 children, then they should, in effect, act accordingly?
I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that assumption, but the reality is that the context in which people's lives currently exist is that this whole notion that it's unaffordable is based on the Cameron words of skivers and strivers, and pitting one person against the other, a usual neoliberal ploy to other the poor. What people want and need is a fair wage for a decent day's work, not 0 hours insecurity. The most apparent skivers, if you like, are the rich people who pocketed billions of pounds in COVID contracts, and there is no outrage over that or an attempt to recover that funding.
Neil, that's a slightly different issue, and I actually think there is outrage. If anybody feels unfairness in anywhere, if somebody has conned people and got billions of pounds, nobody likes that. But if we go back to the two-child policy, it seems even Keir Starmer now, who thought it was a terrible policy, didn't want it. The closer you get to power, and with all respect, you're nowhere near power, but the closer you get to power, you realise the public agrees with it, and you've got to think of the fairness between the taxpayer and that person getting benefit.
I hear exactly what you're saying, Esther, and I understand why the public support this, because they've been fed a narrative that these skivers who are taking this largesse, which indeed it's not, are undeserving. And that is not what the welfare state is for. What we need to do is to have people in decent jobs with decent salaries that gives them a standard of living that lifts them out of in-work poverty, and not have any need for a two-child benefit cap because people have enough money to survive on. The reason we have this is because we don't have an anti-poverty strategy, a comprehensive anti-poverty strategy. We've advanced a 5-point anti-poverty strategy in the Alba Party. We're very keen to pursue that. But government ministers, north and south of the border, are not listening to this. And the fundamental question about getting a good deal for taxpayers is that if you lift people out of poverty, then you don't have to spend money on welfare supplements because people get a decent pay in the first place.
Neil,
and that is the fundamental problem.
Neil, can I just ask you very quickly, if you can, about the political fallout from this? Obviously, the fact that the Labour Party are now saying that they're going to retain it, which has been very unpopular with large sections of the Labour Party. Do you think this will make a material difference to their ability to win seats in Scotland when the general election comes? Will this one policy make a big difference, or will it not make much difference at all?
Well, I mean, I think it should, but I don't think it will. I think if you look at the numbers that are coming in from public opinion, the public have swallowed this narrative that these skivers shouldn't be able to access support for their children, which is really quite a sad indictment of where we've arrived at after 15 years of Conservative government. But the reality is we need to change that conversation and help people understand that this is not about handouts. This is about entitlement, and it's fundamentally about lifting people out of in-work poverty so that they don't rely on benefits to get themselves from one
Frank, I'm sure
to the
you'd
other.
agree with that, but think you could get out of poverty in a different way? Quick answer, because I know we haven't got much time left.
Well, I think there is broad agreement
Go on, Frank.
on the need for good jobs that pay well, and not increasing the welfare budget. We will be spending almost £100 billion on universal credit by the time of the next general election but one. And that is something that I think the Labour Party are now very focused on as they approach government.
Frank, thank you very much. Neil, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. A big issue that's rumbling on in politics.
Now, by-election fever has hit politics this week, with a trio of seats being contested on Thursday across the country in Somerset, Yorkshire and the former seat of Boris Johnson in Uxbridge.
With Labour, Lib Dem and Conservatives each getting a seat, the by-elections were billed as a key test for the Prime Minister as the 2024 general election draws nearer. We're joined now by Labour MP for Brighton and Kemptown, Lloyd Russell Moyle. So you must be pleased after those by-elections.
Yes, well, I think the Selby result was really delightful. I mean, that's part of your end of the world, really. But I spent many years in Yorkshire and around Yorkshire, and I know that was a hard fight, but very pleased to win back Selby after too long in government hands. And I suspect the Liberal Democrats are happy as well. The government must be very disappointed to have lost 2 of their seats. And it shows a very bad form for the government, I suspect. Even the Uxbridge seat, they only managed to scrape through with the very smallest of margins. And I suspect when there's a general election there, we will see that potentially falling to Labour as the national issues rather than local issues win out the day.
Well, we'll come on to Uxbridge in a second, Lloyd, but you said that the result in Selby was fantastic, which it clearly was for the Labour Party. Nobody could deny that. Keir Starmer's obviously been ditching quite a lot of the things he inherited from Jeremy Corbyn. So is this a vindication of Keir Starmer's strategy of doing that?
Well, I think that what you see is a rejection of conservatism primarily, and that's why the Lib Dem vote collapsed and all went to Labour, and the Labour vote in the southwest collapsed and all went to Lib Dem. So I think primarily this is an anti-conservative vote, but it is quite right. Keir has said that the economy will be so wrecked when we get in that we will have to make tough choices. I think that some of the choices need to be made in the round, and I think that the choice to scrap the two-child policy needs to still be on the table when we look at in the round the policies that are best to achieve the aims that Keir and the Labour Party want, which is abolishing child poverty, among other things. But I think it is right that we say we won't be able to do all of them straight away. And I think the voters appreciate that.
Now, in Uxbridge, everybody seems to agree that what lost Labour that by-election was the ULEZ policy. Do you agree that that was the reason why the Conservatives won that by-election and Labour lost it? And if so, should Labour now be scrapping the expansion of ULEZ?
Well, Labour didn't manage to gain that seat, but the Conservatives only just scraped hold to continue to hold it. And I do agree, I knocked on in Uxbridge many times on the day and beforehand, that ULEZ was a problem. I think it was a problem because we didn't manage to reframe the discussion to talk about the mitigations that people could play. 90% of people have a ULEZ compliant car. It's only 10% that don't. But also there is some great fairness issue there. When ULEZ was introduced in inner London, it was announced by Boris Johnson initially when he was mayor. There was a 2-year lead-in time. There was then 4 years from 17 to 21 when local residents got a free ULEZ pass. Now, in outer London, that is not being offered. And my view is that ULEZ shouldn't be scrapped, but people in the outer boroughs should be given the same residence pass lead-in time that the inner borough was given, which is 4 years of a free pass. Not for people outside of the borough, but people in the borough. And that
Lord,
needs
just
to be
a
funded.
quickie, just a quickie. If Keir Starmer then gets rid of ULEZ, if Keir Starmer doesn't scrap this two-child policy, Keir Starmer's already got rid of his green policies. Are you still happy to be a Labour MP?
Well, Keir Starmer's not getting rid of ULEZ. It's a Sadiq Khan policy, so I don't know what that's got to do with the price of eggs. Clearly, we need to make sure that the public...
You're still happy to be a Labour
Yeah.
MP if he ditches his green and doesn't do the child policy, benefit policy?
Well, I've been a Labour member under Tony Blair, under Gordon Brown, under Ed Miliband, Harriet Harman when she was deputy leader, and
You're staying put.
I'm not going anywhere.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Now, a spate of recent events has led to questions as to whether Britain is still a Christian society.
Last week, a pro-life group were prevented from attending York Minster, and the Archbishop of York has described the opening of the Lord's Prayer as problematic. A Conservative councillor has also been suspended for calling pride a sin of the Christian faith.
Are Christian beliefs still compatible with modern society in Britain? Well, join us now to discuss this is Tim Dieppe, spokesperson for Christian Concern. So, Tim, thanks for joining us. Do you worry that being a Christian is now incompatible with British society?
Thank you. I think it's become, sadly, socially acceptable, it seems, to discriminate against Christians in our society. And this extends even to the Conservative Party, it appears, from the example of Councillor Lawal, who you mentioned. He tweeted that pride is not a virtue, but a sin, which is standard Christian teaching, and was just immediately, sort of within a matter of days, suspended from the Conservative Party, cancelled from 7 or 8 different organisations, including local, initiatives like Groundwork Northampton, a local school academy that was a governor of, and then also had a threat of contract removal from his business, which forced him to resign as a director of his business as well. Quite an extraordinary thing. All he's done is tweeted standard Christian teaching, and he gets removed from his job and removed from lots of different organisations. And I think the fact that all these organisations thought it's acceptable, just immediately cancel him, dismiss him, force him to resign, no questions asked. You tweeted that pride is a sin, therefore you should be cancelled, shows the extent of social acceptance of discrimination against Christians who express their traditional, well thought through historic Christian beliefs that pride is sinful, for example. And I think that's quite shocking.
Tim, the thing is, more people describe themselves as Christian in the census in one form or another than any other religion. 46% of people, 27.5 million people. Yep. It's down from 2011, but there's still big numbers. We've got an established Church of England. We've got 26 Church of England bishops that sit by right in the House of Lords. Doesn't sound to me as if Christianity is struggling in the UK.
Well, let me give you some more examples then. David McCareth lost his job for refusing to say he would call a woman or a man madam if it insisted on doing so. Maureen Martin lost her job for actually on election literature saying she believed marriage between a man and a woman, and she lost her job for that. Bernard Randall preached in a school chapel in a Christian act of worship that people should be free to disagree with LGBT ideology. He lost his job, and the Church of England actually branded him a safeguarding risk and have barred him, therefore, from preaching in any church across the country. Church of England teaching has been used against Christians in court. Their own guidance for schools, which actually says that there should be such things as trans pupils and trans ideology should be taught as fact in certain instances. So we are becoming a society that's very intolerant of traditional Christian beliefs in this country.
Tim Dieppe, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. Maybe the Church of England needs to be a bit more pro-Christian.
Absolutely, they do. Absolutely, they do.
Anyway, coming up, Lee Anderson joins us for his take on the by-election results as the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, as well as a GB News presenter.
And all I can say is we should be so lucky. Pete Waterman shares his latest musical inspiration by Kylie Minogue. See you soon.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So it's been quite a gloomy start to the day for many with plenty of rain around, and this is all due to this area of low pressure that's going to move eastwards through this weekend, bringing some stronger winds as well across southern parts of the UK as those isobars pack together. Now looking at this afternoon across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, a fine afternoon with some sunny spells and the odd spot of rain, but elsewhere gloomy and cloudy with plenty of rain around and some heavier bursts for western hills. And the temperatures reflecting that with highs only into the teens, maybe just scraping 20 degrees in the southeast. Now, as we go through this evening, that rain is going to continue to move its way eastwards, so plenty of rain around across much of England and Wales and into Northern Ireland. Remaining drier across Scotland with some clear spells, and in those northeasterly winds feeling cool tonight there too. But elsewhere, with stronger winds, especially for southern coasts, and plenty of cloud around, those temperatures remaining in the teens. Now, as we go to Sunday, we have this band of rain that's going to sit across northern England, maybe pushing into northern parts of Wales as well. So if you are out and about in these areas throughout Sunday, do bear this in mind, as there could be some difficult driving conditions. Either side of this, though, some brighter spells, but still a few scattered showers, and feeling more pleasant in the sunshine across southern parts of England.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Live with Esther and Phil. In a few moments' time, we'll be speaking to Lee Anderson, Vice Chairman of the Conservative Party and GB News presenter, to ask him what went so wrong in the Selby by-election and what went right in the Uxbridge one. We'll also be speaking to Vince Cable, former leader of the Lib Dems, to say what happened there, went so right for them in Somerset and Frome.
We'll be speaking to music legend Pete Waterman about his new musical that's going to be coming to a theatre near you soon, I Should Be So Lucky.
Yes, and this week, a Muslim lady kicked off in a bar, had a brawl, but she escaped having to wear a tag because she said it went against her sort of religious belief. She couldn't be wearing a tag. Is that right? Shouldn't we all be equal in the law, in the eyes of the law?
And of course, it's the same format at the end of our show every week. Sports and Showbiz with the wonderful Aidan McGee and Hayley Palmer. They'll be giving us all the latest. It's the Ashes test. We're worried that it's going to rain all weekend in Manchester to stop England from winning. Aidan, yes, well, of course, the Lionesses in Australia as well, but we'll be getting all the latest Sports and Showbiz from Aidan and Hayley. And of course, we want to hear from you about all of these things. So please email us gbviews@gbnews.com, and we'll enjoy reading them out, and we'll read as many as we can through the show. But first of all, before all of that, it's the latest news headlines with the ever so wonderful Tatiana.
Phil, thank you very much and good morning. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. Millions of rail passengers are facing disruption today as strikes by the RMT union continue on one of the busiest travel days of the year. Thousands of RMT members at 14 train companies are walking out over pay and conditions. Services are also disrupted because of a ban on overtime by the ASLEF union for train drivers. Meanwhile, the Port of Dover says it could take passengers up to 2.5 hours to pass through border checks during peak hours as schools have broken up for the holidays. Enhanced post-Brexit passport checks by French border officials have also increased processing times. Travel expert Simon Calder has been at the Port of Dover this morning.
Cars expected to turn up at a rate of 13 per minute. And certainly the rate I've been seeing them here so far this morning, that feels about right. This, of course, is the ferry port that takes people to across to Calais and also to Dunkirk. Actually, just looking around, it's moving pretty slowly. They are saying they could possibly have delays of 2.5 hours.
Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of people are expected to depart from Heathrow and Gatwick airports over the coming days, adding to the travel difficulties. Around 200,000 people are expected at Manchester Airport, 71,000 from Bristol. With passenger volumes returning to pre-pandemic levels this summer and some ports exceeding those volumes, the Border Force expects to see more than 34 million air arrivals coming through UK passport control over the coming months. Families going on European beach holidays are being hit by higher prices compared with last summer due to inflation. New figures from the Post Office show the cost of meals, drinks and beach items have risen year on year. Puglia in Italy was the only location where prices for UK visitors have dropped. The highest annual increases are in Bulgaria, Turkey and Madeira. Now, Sir Keir Starmer says Labour cannot rest on its laurels. The party had a historic win in the Selby and Ainsty seat in yesterday's by-elections, with a majority of more than 4,000. Addressing the National Policy Forum in Nottingham this morning, the Labour leader set out his vision for Britain ahead of next year's general election.
So our journey back to decency, security, standing tall, an NHS fit for the future, safer streets in your community, cheap and clean electricity in your home, higher growth in your town, the class ceiling shattered. It will be long, it will be difficult, and it will require extraordinary levels of determination.
Supermarkets have more than doubled their margins on fuel since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The RAC says Asda, Tesco, Morrisons and Sainsbury's were making an average of around 4.7% pence per litre on fuel sales when the Ukraine war began in February last year. The motoring company found this had increased to around 10 pence per litre, leading to higher pump prices. Supermarket fuel margins were 2.3 pence per litre in 2016. The number of cancer staff leaving the NHS is on the rise, with more than 4,000 having left the workforce last year. New figures from NHS England show the rate of those leaving cancer hospitals and community health services hit 12.1% in the year to September last year. That was an increase from 10.4% the year before and the highest rate since at least 2010. It comes as new analysis from Macmillan shows since 2010, the number of patients seen by a specialist for suspected cancer has grown almost 4 times faster than the number of staff. A range of measures to tackle inequalities in healthcare for women have been launched by the government. £25 million will be spent on health hubs to support women at every stage of their lives. Women who suffer pregnancy loss have been promised improved care. As part of the new measures, the NHS website will also be updated to include more content on hormone replacement therapy and enable girls and women to access information more easily. And finally, Kensington Palace has released a photo of Prince George to mark his 10th birthday. Prince George is pictured smiling for the camera, for those watching on television, wearing a checkered shirt and teal trousers, while sitting on some steps at Windsor. The future king celebrates his birthday today. You're with GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now it's back to Esther and Philip.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live with Esther and Phil. Thanks, Tatiana. The time now is 11:07.
As the fallout continues on this week's by-elections, and with the only glimmer of hope for the Conservatives at the Uxbridge by-election, where voters came out in force to vote against ULEZ, Conservative ministers and MPs are asking Rishi to drop the party's net zero targets.
Well, we're joined now by GB News presenter and the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, Lee Anderson. Great to see you. Now, we'll come to Uxbridge in a moment, but there was 2 other disasters that went on, wasn't there? There was Selby and there was Somerset and Frome. So who is responsible for those losses, do we say, and those massive defeats? Is it the candidates, CCHQ or the Prime Minister?
Well, none of those, Esther. I would say it's you, it's Phil, it's me, and it's the parliamentary party. It's our fault that we lost those elections. Now let's hold our hands up. We're MPs of the governing party in this country. We should all hold our hands up and take some responsibility rather than just picking individuals out. Look, we sit there every day. I've been there nearly 4 years now. You two's been there a little bit longer. There's a certain course that we're travelling on. It's been not good for the two by-elections that you mentioned, but the one that we did win was it's given us a flicker of hope in that there was, one thing that was actually campaigned on, this terrible tax, this tax on fresh air, this money grab from car. Now, I think we have to learn lessons from this. Look, we all know that by-elections, especially when you come into the end of a parliament or end of the 5 years, should we say, are going to be very difficult for the incumbent government to win. But we were punished. And the message I got on the doorsteps in Frome and up in Selby was that we're a little bit fed up with you at the moment. We want to vote for you, but please give us a reason to vote for you. Now, it's up to us as a party to show our loyal Conservative voters that stopped at home last week that we've got to give them a reason to come out. And, like I say, a little bit of hope in Uxbridge, where we had the ULEZ campaign. I think, look at that. Let's learn from it. Let's not be arrogant and realise that our voters out there do want to vote for us. So it's your fault.
Just moving on to Uxbridge then, Lee. Obviously, that was, a huge relief for the Prime Minister and for the Conservative Party. It was seen as basically Labour losing it because of ULEZ rather than a massive vote of confidence in the Conservative Party. I guess the question is, this was, given that this was sort of motorists, in effect, fighting back about being fleeced and taken for a ride by politicians, people could argue, well, hold on a minute, the governments know better. They've got these net zero policies, which are all about fleecing motorists, taking money out of people's pockets. So is it time for the Conservative government to scrap the target of this sort of mad rush to net zero rather than fall into the same trap that Labour did in Uxbridge?
Well, I think, Phil, that my views on net zero. I've been quite vocal from day one. Nobody disagrees with the notion that we've got to make our planet much cleaner and leave this planet in a better condition than when we arrived. The one thing that concerns me about net zero is the fact that we seem to be doing it quicker, faster, and more costlier than any other nation on this country. And I worry about the constituents in Ashfield when they're struggling to pay their gas bills and electric bills, and struggling to fill the car up at the petrol station. So I would say what we need to do is have a rethink, because if we don't look at Uxbridge and the reasons, and the candidate Steve, it was quite clear. He didn't take any credit for that win, and he didn't give any credit really to the party. It was all down to the ULEZ campaign. It was Labour that actually lost that, and thank goodness, because like I say, it's given us a little bit of hope. And I just hope that some of us aren't too arrogant to look at that result and think we can just plough ahead. Because at the moment, I think Khan, he's being arrogant. He's going to plough ahead with ULEZ. But the old flip-flop, Starmer, the slippery Starmer, he's sort of flip-flopping on this again and changing his mind.
Lee, just very quickly, a government minister, Johnny Mercy, compared the newer Labour MP for Selby to someone out of In-Betweeners. Is that the view of is that a government view? Is that a view that you would support?
Well, I don't think so, Phil, to be honest. I mean, it's probably just a flippant comment he's made. It's probably, maybe a poor choice of words. I think he was having a go at how young this new MP looks. Look, he's democratically elected, so he's got every right to be there in Parliament. Same as yourself, Phil. And I would say this, just to finish off. Esther, you're looking absolutely beautiful again today. And the next time you're looking for a husband, Esther, could you please raise the bar a little bit, because look what you sat with.
She'll put you on the panel. She'll put you on the selection panel, Lee. Don't worry about that. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. We'll end it there quickly.
I'm matching my dress now. I've gone all pink with that there. But he has a very good point. What can I say? Yeah. Now, look, we're back here now. Look at the top stories of the week with former Labour Party advisor Matthew Lazar and diary editor at The Spectator, James Heal. But you wanted to come in on that ULEZ situation with the candidate there who stood in the seat for Labour.
Absolutely. Danny Beales, who was the Labour candidate at the Uxbridge by-election and who lost by, a few hundred votes, has been, rather than having a lie-in this morning, he's gone to Nottingham to this gathering gathering of the Labour Party called the National Policy Forum, and he's either about to speak or has just finished speaking, and he is going to launch a blistering attack on Sadiq Khan, saying, and this I believe is the quote, that the ULEZ policy, that Sadiq Khan's ULEZ policy, cut us off at the knees in the by-election. He's going to say this publicly, and that ULEZ is a bad policy, it must be rethought. So the row in Labour on ULEZ is only just beginning, really.
Is he going to be the Labour candidate in Uxbridge at the next election?
I would have thought so, because he was already the Labour candidate beforehand, so I think he's,
But it's quite interesting.
going to carry on being interesting.
Sadiq Khan doesn't seem to be listening, does he? He said something like, I won't be U-turning, but I will listen, which means really nothing. But I think Keir needs to show what he stands for, because he's been not had a position on this either.
There's also quite an interesting thing about Sadiq Khan's candidacy, in that he basically was nodded through as the candidate. There wasn't actually much of a selection procedure. And certainly,
look what you ended up with.
So, well, you know, Sadiq has his strengths, but he does have his weaknesses too. And clearly, maybe the fact that he wasn't put through, and we've seen the Tories this week, you know, it might be that, you know, Susan's actually had to face a grilling, and, you know, she's had to face quite a tough and challenging selection process. Maybe that means that she'll be the dark horse. Who knows?
James, what story do you want to discuss?
Well, I mean, one of the stories that caught my eye, you're talking earlier in the news about the petrol prices, but was the thing about sort of shrinkflation and prices going up. One of the things that caught my eye was about, I'm a football fan, like Arsenal, support Arsenal, about the cost of T-shirts for football clubs going up. And so Nottingham Forest has put their price up by the most in the Premier League, 26%, which is the highest. And every single club, it seems, from the story in the Mirror, are going to be putting their prices up.
They're not shrinking the size of the shirts as well, though, are they, hopefully?
No,
hopefully not for me, else I'll never get one on, to be perfectly honest.
But it's a classic thing with the Premier League clubs, where they change the kit every year or two now, and in order to make some money off it. And now the price is around £80 or so, which I think, for any of the parents watching, is quite hard to afford.
Stephen and Ellie were discussing this earlier on the breakfast show about, it's one of the papers saying about tins of baked beans, that there's now fewer beans in it and more sauce in it, which is obviously outrageous. As a massive fan of Heinz baked beans, I'm absolutely outraged by it. We've obviously got it also with Andrex. What's in the number of...
Oh, I was just amazed that they knew there was 10 fewer beans in a tin of baked beans. I mean, who was... Though I did notice myself they were sloppy. I did notice there was more sort of tomato sauce.
Have you noticed that Andrex have got fewer papers in the toilet roll?
But James is about to explain that he had.
There's a story in the story in the Times, which I haven't been counting up my own pieces of Andrex, I'll say that, about there's been one customer who's reported that he's measured it, and apparently there's 5 foot less of Andrex in the new packs, big packs that you can get, and so that accounts, I don't know how he measured this, to 10 fewer trips to the use in the toilets, which I thought was quite telling. And I think it basically shows basically the costs of shrinkflation affecting every bit of national life, including our toilets.
The people in Somerton and Frome, Selby and Ainsty, and in Uxbridge and South Ruislip won't have worried about the lack of toilet paper. Well, they've had plenty coming through their letterboxes over the last few weeks. From all parts.
Well, I mean, aren't people still using the supplies that are still in many a spare bedroom from the panic buying of Blue Roll before the pandemic, which remains...
Got through them. Got through them. Matthew?
Yeah, so, look, I mean, this is quite a serious story, which is that if you ask anybody what the worst piece of legislation ever passed by Parliament is, they always say the Dangerous Dogs Act. Keir Mather and young James won't remember, but there was a sort of big issue with dangerous dogs in the 80s and early 90s, and this legislation was rushed through. But it seems that dangerous dogs are back, because there's now a new breed called American Bullies, Bully XLs, in fact, which are sort of a breed... Extra large, yeah, absolutely. A breed of pit bulls, which are causing carnage. A young girl was attacked in a park in Liverpool just this week. So, you know, my question is really, what do we do if you know, because we've seen that legislation's failed it. How do we solve this problem? Because they're so horrific.
But then we always say it isn't the dog, it is the owners. And we know some of the horrendous techniques that they're doing with dogs to make them hang from trees to strengthen their jaws so they can do fighting. There are various other horrific...
Because they're clearly bred for fighting, aren't they?
This is the owners here who need to be taken to court and sorted out. It isn't really the dog.
But if you, I mean, I'm just to play devil's advocate, if you've got a dog that is literally an entire breed which is bred specifically for dog fighting, does that
Well,
make
we
it
have
a
a
different...
problem, but who bred them to do that? It wasn't the dogs who decided, oh, let's all get really super nasty. It was humans who did that. They need to be taken to court, challenged, put behind bars or whatever it is.
What do you think, James?
I think the key thing is that this is a new breed as well, and I think some of the guidance on this from the government is about pit bulls. It relates to the 1970s. So obviously since then you've had 50 years of different types of breeding, this new strain of XL coming from America as well. I think where 70% of attacks in America are due to pit bulls, American pit bulls. Right. So I think it's something that needs to be looked at and addressed, not through legislation.
Is this underground dog fighting? Again, they need to be raided, they need to be sorted, they need to know what's going on, because it's criminality in every way. Sort of illegal dogs, illegal money, illegal gambling, the whole thing.
Yeah, but also I think it's now also not just undercover and underground, it's basically coming out and people are maybe a bit ignorant of what the law is on this and the guidance, etc., and how dangerous these dogs can be. So it's also about sort of information, I'd say, and making sure people know that the dogs, what the kind of risks are of them.
James, you were interested in Dame Alison and her future at NatWest Bank.
Yes, well, I mean, this is Boris's latest column. I think the most interesting one he's written so far, taking aim at the head of NatWest after the dreadful row about Nigel Farage and these bank accounts and Coots. I mean, look, this is a woman who's paid $5 million last year in salary. She had a bonus, I think, of $640,000, and this whole row over Coots has gone right to the top, and obviously Coots is owned by NatWest. And so whether she was alleged to have been potentially briefing this BBC journalist on misinformation, basically saying that Nigel Farage's account was closed because he didn't meet the financial threshold, and actually it was a case, it now seems, that the bank looked and they thought his political views were a reason to cancel him, and I think this is a story that's going to rumble on, and this is going to be like Gerald Ratner on steroids.
People are now going to look, as coming out in the papers today, it's not just individuals, it's businesses being closed that they don't agree with their views in one way or another. This is going to rumble through the banking sector.
We did a Twitter poll that said about asking whether Dame Alison Rowe should be sacked, and 88% said yes. What's your view?
Well, I think she's hanging by a thread as we speak. I mean, it's going to be taught in business schools as an example of how not to handle a crisis, isn't it? Is
Gerald Ratner going to be breathing a sigh of relief that he's now no longer going to be...
I think Dame Alison's name, whether she stays or goes, will be carved on that hall of infamy of how not to handle a crisis. And I think that there's a very serious point here, which is that those on the left, and I don't mean the Labour Party, I mean this kind of liberal left tweeting away, who have been taking glee at Nigel's woes. I don't, the blacklist generally and historically have affected the left a lot more than the right. And, we remember people from Hollywood in the 50s, through to building sites in the 70s. You cannot have people being cancelled because of their politics, either professionally or with banking services. So we need the left to speak out.
I had something that happened to me the other way. I was Minister of State for Employment. I was the MP on Merseyside. I lost my seat. So I thought, well, I'll go and set up my own business and I'll start a new banking account. I went to set up a new bank account, having been Minister for Employment, needed to get a job. I was not given one because they classed me as politically exposed, and I could not take it through. And I remember taking it to the House at the time, and they did have a select committee on it. But the whole thing's a disgrace, so I'm glad it's being looked at.
And I think ministers, actually, in fairness to them, have done really well in responding to this, and they've introduced new guidelines and advice to banks saying that you need at least 90 days' notice if you're going to close someone's accounts. And I suspect it'll be an issue that's considered before select committees in the coming months.
James, Matthew, as ever, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. Coming up in a few moments, after a young Muslim woman got into a drunken brawl but was let off being given a sobriety tag because it would interfere with her faith, we're asking, shouldn't everyone be equal under the law? You won't want to miss that debate.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So it's been quite a gloomy start to the day for many, with plenty of rain around, and this is all due to this area of low pressure that's going to move eastwards through this weekend, bringing some stronger winds as well across southern parts of the UK as those isobars pack together. Now, looking at this afternoon across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, a fine afternoon with some sunny spells and the odd spot of rain, but elsewhere gloomy and cloudy with plenty of rain around and some heavier bursts for western hills. And the temperatures reflecting that, with highs only into the teens, maybe just scraping 20 degrees in the southeast. As we go through this evening, that rain is going to continue to move its way eastwards, so plenty of rain around across much of England and Wales and into Northern Ireland. Remaining drier across Scotland with some clear spells, and in those northeasterly winds feeling cool tonight there too. But elsewhere, with stronger winds, especially for southern coasts, and plenty of cloud around, those temperatures remaining in the teens. Now, as we go to Sunday, we have this band of rain that's going to sit across northern England, maybe pushing into northern parts of Wales as well. So if you are out and about in these areas throughout Sunday, do bear this in mind, as there could be some difficult driving conditions. Either side of this, though, some brighter spells, but still a few scattered showers, and feeling more pleasant in the sunshine across southern parts of England.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
and action.
Sergeant read my superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live with Esther and Phil. It's 11:26.
Now, a 20-year-old Muslim woman has been let off wearing her electronic tag for religious reasons.
The order was imposed after Hasina Hussain hit a manager in a drunken brawl at a bowling alley.
Her lawyer claims the young woman's faith has grown stronger since the incident and so wasn't given a tag as it would have interfered with her faith. So joining us now to discuss this is political commentator Bushra Sheikh. So this sounds awful in a way. Here's this lady, drunken ball, you know, what she screamed at the police, what she did, and yet she says, well, can't wear a tag because of my religious faith. I don't want to go for evening prayer with a tag on. But everybody should be the same before the law.
Absolutely, and this isn't something, you know, I firstly want to just say that any type of violence is not acceptable at all. But in this instance, you know, we are going to have religious and cultural reasons for a judge will take into consideration. You know, that's just not one component of it. It was also the fact that she didn't have any previous incidences or anything like this happen in her life before. So it was out of character. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, what the judge did is look at, is she better? Is she saying that the faith is going to make... Because she also left alcohol. She said that because her faith encouraged her to leave alcohol and it would be important
Should she ever have had alcohol in the first place if she was following her faith?
Well, I mean, yes, but we're not perfect, are we? So people don't do things 100% of the time. But what the judge did think is he thought, well, actually, if this is going to hinder her rehabilitation, perhaps this is something that I should look over instead.
But the thing is, I guess lots of people say, well, hold on a minute, should the law allow these kind of loopholes for people to say, well, I know that if I say, oh, I'm now, you know, devoutly Muslim again, I had a bit of a wobble, but I'm now back on track, and this is going to interfere with my faith, I know I'm going to avoid getting a tag, and a solicitor can tell somebody that builds up a resentment amongst the rest of the population that probably otherwise wouldn't exist. Should the law allow those anomalies?
I think so. I think there's always a link to committing a crime or doing something wrong and then having this kind of spiritual awakening. I think people do have that because they realise they did something wrong. I think it's really important to also establish and understand are these reoffenders? Because if they were to, say, use it the first time and then subsequently use it again and again, then you could see it was a pattern. But in this instance with her, I believe her name is Hasina Hussain, it was something that she'd never done before. She said that she was struggling with alcohol, and we know that alcohol is a big problem in this country, but I think we should also be compassionate and look at people from a wider lens rather than to kind of categorise them and say just because it's from a religious angle that we shouldn't allow those allowances.
But I guess people might say, well, look, hold on, ethnic minorities quite rightly have been campaigning over the years that we should have equality in this country, everyone should be treated the same, we shouldn't be discriminated against. And then we get this kind of case and people say, well, hold on a minute, it seems here that what people like this young lady want is equality when it suits. Yeah. But when it doesn't suit them to have equality, they want favourable treatment. And is there not something wrong with that?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I think whether, you know, whatever faith you come from, if having a tag, one of those tags on your leg, is going to hinder your process of being better, I think a judge will take that into account. You know, what we also have to understand is that we have a very fair judicial system in this country. So if the judge really didn't think that that was a reason for her not to wear it, he wouldn't have let her. So I think it's important that even if you're Christian, or if you're or Jewish or any faith, if this is an issue and it's going to hinder that, then I think that should be taken into account.
Even if it's right or wrong, do you accept it builds up a resentment amongst the rest of the population, which then does cause wider problems in the long run?
I think people are always going to have an opinion. I think they're going to be people who will say, actually, this is OK for her, we understand that. Is she a reoffender? No, she isn't. And there's going to be some people that can be against
And I think Bushra brought up a good point before. You know, yes, it was reported that way, that maybe greater weight was given to the fact she said I couldn't wear a tag to, you know, my religious sort of services. But maybe it was more about the fact that she'd never done this before, hadn't then done it afterwards. So I think, yes, it would, if it were on that she shouldn't have a tag just because of her faith, it would build up greater resentment, absolutely. But if it were on other things, then that would, I think, and also, be fairer.
You know, just to add...
Because other people would have that taken into consideration.
Of course, there's so many different elements when it comes to a judge deciding. Don't forget that she also, I believe, had a 15-day rehabilitation course that she had to do. She paid a £500 fine and, you know, things like that. She also served a sentence, which wasn't obviously in prison, but had a sentence as well. She had this on a criminal record, so it's lots of things. And she's never been an offender before.
Bushra, thank you very much indeed for that interesting debate. Tell us what you think. Do you think it was perfectly reasonable for the judge to make that kind of decision and use his discretion? Or does it make your blood boil to think that people are being treated differently? I'd love to hear what you think. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Still to come in a few moments, we should be so lucky, as Pete Waterman tells us about his new musical full of Kylie Minogue and Stock Aitken and Waterman 80s hits. You won't want to miss that. But first, here's the news headlines with Tatiana.
Esther, thank you very much and good morning. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Millions of rail passengers are facing disruption today as strikes by the RMT union continue on one of the busiest travel days of the year. Thousands of its members at 14 train companies are walking out over pay and conditions. Services also disrupted because of a ban on overtime by ASLEF train drivers. Meanwhile, the Port of Dover says it could take passengers up to 2.5 hours to pass through border checks during peak hours. Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of people are expected to depart from Heathrow and Gatwick Airport over the coming days. Around 200,000 people are expected at Manchester Airport, 71,000 from Bristol. With passenger volumes returning to pre-pandemic levels this summer, Border Force expects to see more than 34 million air arrivals coming through UK passport control over the coming months. Sir Keir Starmer says Labour cannot rest on its laurels. Addressing the National Policy Forum in Nottingham this morning, the Labour leader set out his vision for Britain ahead of next year's general election.
So our journey back to decency, security, standing tall, an NHS fit for the future, safer streets in your community, cheap and clean electricity in your home, higher growth in your town, the glass ceiling shattered. It will be long. It will be difficult, and it will require extraordinary levels of determination.
Supermarkets have more than doubled their margins on fuel since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The RAC says Asda, Tesco's, Morrison's and Sainsbury's were making an average of around 4.7 pence per litre on fuel sales when the Ukraine war began in February last year. The motoring company found this had increased to around 10 pence per litre, leading to higher pump prices. You can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live with Esther and Phil, whether you're watching us on the telly or you're listening to us on the radio. Kylie Minogue is to step back in time for a new musical featuring the songs of hit songwriters Mike Stock, Matt Aitken and Pete Waterman, and the songs that shot them to the top of the charts in the 1980s.
We're delighted that Pete Waterman joins us now to tell us more. Pete, thanks ever so much for your time. Great idea, this musical. How did it come about?
Well, we did a Channel 5 documentary about Stock Aitken Waterman. The response was fantastic, and although we've been asked many times to do a musical, this seemed the right time to do it. And it's very exciting.
It absolutely is. Now, look, you should, or I should, or anybody should be so lucky. I love that story of how the song came about. It's an absolute cracker. You're going to have to tell us.
Well, Kylie turned up, you know, we'd agreed to make a record with her, but I was in Manchester doing The Hitman and Her, and suddenly Mike rang me and said, there's a small amphibian in the reception expecting to be produced by us. I said to Mike, well, you know, you'll have to tell her to come back in a couple of weeks. He said, she can't, she's on her way back to Australia. So we literally wrote I Should Be So Lucky, and I guess the rest is history. We certainly didn't know how big she was going to be.
What I want to know,
But
Pete,
they said at the time, when what I heard is when she called up and said she was waiting for a song, you said something like, well, she'll be so lucky.
Yeah.
And somebody went, yeah, that's the song. And off you went and started writing it.
Yeah, well, we had a guy that worked for us called Pit Stop, who was our disco promotion guy, and his favourite saying was, no, they should be so lucky. And that's where it came from. You know, I just said, oh, well, she should be so lucky. And they went, there you go, let's get on with it.
Pete, why were Stock Aitken and Waterman so successful in that sort of period from the mid-1980s onwards? How was it that you managed to churn out so many hit records in such a short space of time?
Well, you know, we got lucky, but, you know, they always say if it's hard work brings good luck, and it did. I mean, we worked so hard. I mean, we were working 5 days a week, you know, 10 hours a day, and it just kept rolling. And we didn't read the papers. That was the thing. We never read anybody who was giving us any grief. You know, as long as people bought the record, we just carried on.
Pete, did you make these people stars at the end of the day? Like you said, nobody knew Kylie, really. Yes, they might have known her as Neighbours, and I guess she's famous. But in the musical world, you made her a star. And we put out a tweet here to say that you were joining us on the show today. Who was your favourite artist? So there was Kylie Minogue there, Bananarama, Mel and Kim, Rick Astley. Could you give an order which you think they'd be popular with the public?
Well, at the moment, you'd have to pick Rick Astley, wouldn't you? I mean, he stormed it recently at Glastonbury, and Kylie did that last year. Kylie's going on to Vegas. Kylie's in this musical. Yeah, I mean, you know, go back 30 years, Esther, nobody believed this could happen. I mean, they all thought this was a 5-minute thing and it would all be over. Here we are 30 years later, and we're still talking about them.
Well, put it this way, the top one was Kylie Minogue with 41%. Right behind her, though, was Rick Astley with 36%. Then came Bananarama, 18%. Mel and Kim with 5%. But you're a Bananarama fan.
I'm a Bananarama fan. I can't believe they've polled so badly in that, to be honest with you. What was your favourite Stark, Aitken and Waterman song or artist? What was your particular favourite?
Loving the First Degree by Bananarama. Because I was like you, I was a Bananarama fan, and to me, I couldn't believe we were working with them. They gave us our first #1 in America with Venus. They were brilliant to work with because they really challenged us because they'd already been successful. And you know, I was listening to Radio 1 one day, and my hero Berry Gordy was on the show, and they were on about Motown. He said, "Listen, you got your own Motown here." You know, Stock Aitken Waterman just produced the best Motown record that I'd never made, and that was Bananarama's Love in the First Degree.
There you go. You see, I've obviously got an expert eye and an expert opinion. Thank you for that, Pete. I've got a lot of kudos there. So when does this musical start, and where's it going to be? When can people expect to see it?
It starts in November in Manchester and then goes all the way around the country for 27 weeks. So it's a lot of fun. It's hard work because obviously, you know, we're record producers, writers. We wrote them for an artist now. You've got a cast, and it's got, obviously it's theatre, so it's live with a band. And it's very different, like, very challenging for us because our songs we know and people know them so well. So it's getting that balance right between live performance and the songs that people all know.
But Kylie will be at every one. She's going to be digitally enhanced. Not that she needs any enhancing, but she's going to be there at every performance.
Yeah, well, you know, we couldn't quite go to the ABBA one where I think they spent 150 million. I think we spent 150 quid.
Pete, we will be there in Manchester singing all those songs, and obviously I loved Rick Astley, Never Gonna Give You Up, loved it. So thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Now, after the hugely impressive win in Somerton and Frome, is it the start of a Lib Dem revival?
Well, joining us now is Sir Vince Cable, former leader of the Lib Dems. Vince, thank you for joining us. No doubt you will be cock-a-hoop. I guess that people might say, well, look, you know, we've seen all of this before. The Lib Dems, massive swings in by-elections. Christchurch, I think, was 35% back in the day, and yet it went back to the Conservatives at the subsequent general election. Is there any reason you think that it might be different this time round?
Well, it's part of a process of rebuilding since 2015. I mean, I was leader for a couple of years, as you remember, and I think it's a combination of, you know, good by-election results, local government advance. I think we don't expect a spectacular breakthrough, but the fact is we've had, you know, a very solid guerrilla army base who survived the bad years, and who are helping us to rebuild good leadership, well-organised focus. What will happen after this by-election, I think, is that we're considerably strengthened in the West Country. We've, in combination with council results in Somerset, Devon, Cornwall, an area where we've done badly since 2015. We're now recovering. We're poised to take parliamentary seats as well as those in the home counties. So, yeah, I mean, it's, you know, we're not going to win 300 seats at the next general election, but there will be a significant advance from where we are.
Just the thing that struck me about these by-elections was that the Lib Dems lost their deposit, I think, in Selby and in Uxbridge. Labour, I think, lost their deposit in Somerton and Frome. Even if there isn't a formal sort of agreement going on between Labour and the Lib Dems, is there anything informal going on which is sort of designed to help each other out in these elections against the Conservatives?
Well, there's no sort of grand conspiracy to gang up on the Conservatives, but, you know, the simple fact is the government is pretty unpopular and the electorate are smart enough to work out who's most likely to win in a particular seat. And, I mean, the way the party signal this is by concentrating their resources where they know they can win. And it was obviously the Labour Party were never going to make any headway in Somerton and Frome, but we did. So tactical voting is a fact of life. You know, some people don't like the principle of it, but until we change the voting system, that's the way that people are going to best use their vote. So there's no concerted ganging up. There's no planning of this at a leadership level. It's just happening through the grassroots.
And I guess one of the things that might scupper a Lib Dem revival in the southwest come a general election could be the Lib Dem stance on the EU, given that the southwest sort of voted overwhelmingly for Brexit. What is the Lib Dems' current policy on the EU? Is it to rejoin? Is it to rejoin some elements of it, to bring back free movement of people or the single market or whatever? Do they have a policy along those lines? And if so, might that be a disadvantage in the southwest when a general election comes?
It doesn't seem so. We've made strong recovery grounds over the last couple of years. I think people are well aware of that. We are the, if you like, the pro-Europe party. We campaign to stay in the European Union. Nobody will forget that. But in practical terms, I mean, there's no prospect of rejoining the European Union in the near future. I think the party has put out a very thoughtful paper which suggests how we could get back to, for example, joining a version of the single market over quite a long period of time and in stages. So, yeah, we do want to rebuild our connections with Europe. The Brexit has done a lot of damage. And there are practical, immediate things, you know, the Horizon project that we're now losing out on, the customs union tariff imposition, which is acting as a block to the development of electric vehicles. You know, good decision last week to have a new battery plant, but we need to build on that.
Can I ask you this question quickly? It was just that we did a poll and it said, would the Conservatives win the next general election if they scrapped their net zero target? And actually 61% has said yes, they would. 39% said no, they wouldn't. If the Lib Dems thought they could win the next election, would they scrap the net zero target?
No, absolutely not. I mean, it's, you know, climate policy, net zero is absolutely central to the party's commitments. But we've got to find a way of doing it that relates to the interests of ordinary people. I mean, a classic example is, you know, getting rid of these ridiculous restrictions on onshore wind. Onshore wind is a very cheap source of power. It will help push down the cost of electricity, and it's been blocked by relatively small minorities. So, you know, we would want to open that up. As you remember, I was Secretary of State for Business. I was very keen on the industrial strategy. So you link in green policies with industry, you know, getting Britain back into building.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning, and congratulations on that by-election result.
Now, join us now for the latest news from the worlds of sport and showbiz are the wonderful Aidan McGee and the even more wonderful Hayley Palmer. Thank you for joining us.
I've been upgraded. I was always not so wonderful.
No, I know. But I felt I was being harsh.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Let's start with the cricket. Are England going to win, or is the rain going to win?
Listen, I've got a very reliable weather app. They're telling me there's a 90% chance of rain in Manchester. That's been borne out so far. We've not had any play. We were due to start at 11 o'clock. There's some possibility of us in play by 4 p.m. Other than that, it's probably going to be decided by the Duckworth-Lewis method. That's nothing to do with pigeons, by the way. That's to do with a batting average, and it's based on the average that they think a team might get, and then they average it out over the course of the match, and that decides the test. And we need.
They don't decide test matches that way, do they? I thought the weather intervened. I thought it was just a draw.
No. Well, actually, a draw is all Australia need anyway.
Yeah.
That'll prove decisive, because if they get a draw from Old Trafford, and it'll be a huge shame because England have amassed a total of 592. We've seen some brilliant knocks by Harry Brooks, 61. Ben Stokes, 51, brilliant series he's had. And Johnny Bairstow, who we were talking about here 2 weeks ago, walking away from his stump, he dropped loads of catches in the field as well. He comes back and he hits 99 and produced a brilliant backstop catch as well the other day. So he's been a story of redemption for him. But sadly, I do think the rain is going to have a big influence over today and tomorrow.
So shocking Manchester, isn't it, for it to be raining?
I was there many years. It was exactly like that.
Hayley, we're going to turn to showbiz now.
Yes.
Mick Jagger.
Yes, he is having a birthday party. I don't know where my invite is yet. I haven't got it, but yeah, he's going to be.
You've got to know who you are first.
Yeah, right. That's quite good for you, Aidan. Anyway, back to me. He's having it at Chelsea.
There's two meanies there, laughing away. I bet you'll find it in the post when you get home.
It's actually at the top of my road. It's at Chelsea Psychic Garden.
Oh, you just go. I just knock on the door anyway.
They're not going to turn you away.
You just go with a card.
hair and go.
Birthday present,
Exactly.
gate crashes.
Exactly. So, yeah, he's hiring out the Chelsea psychic gun. And I just want to know what the guest list is going to be like. It's got to be totally A-list, hasn't it? But I think it's brilliant. He's 80 years old. He's having a big birthday bash. And I think that is the way forward.
This is awful. When you said he was 80, I thought, well, is he already 80? Isn't he now lying about his age?
Well,
Wasn't he 80
shows how old I
a few
was.
years back? No, he isn't. You're right. He was 79.
Yeah.
He is now 80.
I covered a story about his
Quite a
60th.
few-
It shows how old I am.
Oh, it certainly does. But there's quite a few, aren't there, now that sort of...
It's my
80.
dad's 80th birthday was earlier this year, and my
bless
sister's
him.
60th. They're having a birthday year.
Yeah,
That's a good idea. I'm having a birthday month at the moment, and I think you should do everything that just makes you happy in your birthday month.
Do you think
shouldn't
he'd want some tickets for the Lionesses?
Possibly, although they're winning at the moment, so that's good. They're playing against Haiti. They're leading by a Georgia Stanway penalty after 29 minutes. I do worry about England long term, though. It's a huge trip to Australia. It's difficult for any sporting organiser or team to acclimatise to a different time zone. Historically, England have struggled with that. But if you compare the side they put out last summer, who won the Euros, you got Frank Kirby out with a knee injury, Leah Williamson of Chelsea out with a knee injury, Beth Mead out with a knee injury, Ellen White has retired. It reminds me of 2003 World Cup in some ways with the rugby. Remember when they were hit with a few retirements and injuries, they weren't quite the same team for a little while after that. But as champions, they will go down there, or they've arrived there with no inferiority complex. I do, though, think that Australia, who ended England's 30-match unbeaten run, and they're the host nation, I think they could go on and do it.
I'm just in shock that Hayley said I want to do things I really like on my birthday month, and yet she sat on the sofa next to me.
This is true. It's my birthday next Saturday.
Big gap. Big gap.
Big gap in age, yeah.
Totally.
Now, talking of footballers, but not female, male ones, Peter Crouch. What's the Madonna Peter Crouch story?
I love this because basically he was in a restaurant and Madonna's security guards came up to him and they were like, can we have a photo? So Peter Crouch was doing all these photographs and then he said, well, can I have a photo with Madonna? And they were like, oh, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, but she's not been well recently.
No, it was before that. It was
Right.
a while back.
Oh,
But
OK.
the thing is, if you are in a restaurant, sometimes you do just want your privacy. And it is Madonna. Like, this is like, you know, we can make different rules for Madonna, can't we?
I had a go at Dame Burger King.
Maybe if you didn't have all your makeup on and you weren't feeling right and she'd had all of that weird stuff going on in her face, you might just say, this is not the photo, the instant I want people
Exactly, and if
to
it's going
remember
out
me
Peter
by.
Crouch, it's going to go
The answer's
everywhere,
no.
isn't
Yes.
it?
I mean, Aidan, how do you
that.
deal with everyone wanting your autograph all the
And
time?
your
I had it.
Station,
I did, yeah. No, lots of.
Oh, one
yeah, I was in
person in your
Burger King.
life.
I was in Burger King, yeah. And I told him I was famous. That was a whopper.
I can't compete.
Actually, that's for him. That's like,
I think he's been really funny today.
But quickly, the golf. Very, golf open.
Yeah, that's right.
Literally
So
seconds to tell us about this.
yeah, Brian Harman is in front. His closest challenger. This is interesting. Tommy Fleetwood. He's from Southport, just down the road from Hoylake. My family are in Hoylake this weekend watching the golf, having a fantastic time up in Liverpool. And maybe we might see a surprise Tommy Fleetwood doing it tomorrow, but it goes out and it doesn't end until tomorrow evening, of course.
Thank you very much, Aidan. I obviously used to live up the road as well in West Kirby. Thank you, Hayley, too. That's all we've got time for. We will be back next week at the same time. Coming up next is the wonderful Martin Daubney.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So it's been quite a gloomy start to the day for many with plenty of rain around, and this is all due to this area of low pressure that's going to move eastwards through this weekend, bringing some stronger winds as well across southern parts of the UK as those isobars pack together. Now looking at this afternoon across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, a fine afternoon with some sunny spells and the odd spot of rain, but elsewhere gloomy and cloudy with plenty of rain around and some heavier bursts for western hills. And the temperatures reflecting that with highs only into the teens.